I was a nurse saving lives. Now I sleep outside the hospital I once worked in. 8 years ago, I had steady hands that started IVs in impossible veins and a two-bedroom apartment with a view of the river. Tonight, I'm wrapped in a moving blanket behind the loading dock, 20 yards from the emergency room, where everyone called me their best trauma nurse. You think addiction happens to weak people? I saved 14 gunshot victims in 2 hours without blinking. But when a 7-year-old died in my arms from what her mother's boyfriend did to her, something cracked. The medicine room had what I needed. Small patches, paper thin, that made the weight disappear. First it was one after a bad shift, then 3 at a time. Then I was signing out painkillers as waste while patients screamed. My supervisor trusted me. My sister trusted me. I trusted myself right up until security walked me out with a cardboard box and photos from a hidden camera. The knowledge that once let me save lives now tells me exactly what's killing the other homeless people around me. Infections I can diagnose, but can't treat. Overdoses I could reverse if I had the tools I threw away. Here's what haunts me. When you know exactly which medicine could stop your pain, how long before that knowledge becomes the thing that destroys you? The temperature read 9 degrees on the emergency room's digital display, the numbers glowing red through the February darkness. I could see it from my spot behind the loading dock dumpsters, wrapped in a moving blanket that smelled like diesel and old cardboard. 18 months ago, I would have been inside that ER, checking monitors, starting IVs, calling out medication orders. Tonight, I was watching them wheel in Lucia. I knew her from the bus station camp. 3 days ago, she'd told me about the baby, maybe 5 months along. She wasn't sure. No prenatal care. Her boyfriend had disappeared when she started showing. Now she was hypothermic, unconscious, being rushed through the ambulance bay doors I used to stride through with purpose, from 20 yards away. Behind the chain-link fence, I could see everything through the trauma bay windows. The controlled chaos, the blue gowns moving in practiced patterns. My hands twitched with muscle memory. They'd need to warm her slowly. Too fast, and her heart would stop. Her temperature first, then extremities. Warm saline for, heated oxygen, maybe a peritoneal lavage if she was cold enough. The baby would be in distress. They'd need continuous fetal monitoring. Might have to do an emergency C-section if. The chaplain came out 2 hours later. Father Martinez lit a cigarette with shaking hands, stood under the ambulance bay lights, and smoked it down to the filter. I knew that posture. I'd seen it hundreds of times from the other side of the glass. The way his shoulders curved inward, how he kept touching his collar. They'd lost her. Both of them. The knowledge sat in my chest like a stone. I knew exactly what they'd tried in there. Knew the doses, the procedures, the desperate math of trying to save 2 lives at once. I could list every intervention, every medication, in the exact sequence. But I was out here in the cold, my medical knowledge as useless as the expired nursing license still in my wallet. Someone had left a sandwich near my sleeping spot. Turkey and Swiss on wheat, still in its hospital cafeteria wrapper. A bottle of water next to it, the expensive kind from the vending machines. I looked up at the parking structure and caught a glimpse of Marina's silver Honda, same spot she'd parked in for 12 years. Row 3, space 15. She'd seen me. Marina Rodriguez had been my supervisor for 5 years. She'd trusted me with the tough cases, the multiple traumas, the pediatric codes that made other nurses transfer out. Give it to Steady Chun, she'd say. Rebecca doesn't rattle. She'd been in the room when security showed me the hidden camera footage. Watch me palm fentanyl patches on the grainy black and white screen, me tucking them into my scrubs while signing them out as waste. She hadn't been able to look at me. Now she was leaving sandwiches. I ate it slowly, making it last. The cafeteria still used too much mustard, same as always. Through the loading dock fence, I could see directly into the supply room where we used to grab blankets between traumas. The night shift was starting. I recognized the patterns, the way people moved differently at the beginning of a 12-hour stretch than at the end. Dr. Hassan would be the attending tonight. He liked his nurses to hang 2 bags of saline ready, just in case. He'd delivered bad news to more families than anyone else in the hospital, but he still teared up sometimes. I'd seen him cry over Lucia. If I'd been inside, a new security guard walked past, flashlight sweeping. Not Derek. Derek worked days now, probably to avoid seeing me. This one was young, nervous, checking corners Derek would have ignored. He'd find me around midnight, tell me to move along. I'd walk to the 24-hour laundromat on Riverside, sit under those harsh lights that reminded me of the medication room, and pretend to wait for clothes that didn't exist. But for now, I pulled the moving blanket tighter and watched the hospital breathe. The emergency entrance doors sliding open, the helicopter landing pad lights blinking in sequence, the rhythm I knew better than my own heartbeat. Inside, they were probably cleaning the trauma bay, restocking supplies, preparing for the next person they might save. Or might not. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd tell someone how I got here. 18 months earlier. I had everything figured out. That's what I told myself every morning as I pulled into St. Mary's employee lot in my Honda Accord, the one with heated seats and the NPR station preset. I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in Riverside Heights. Not fancy, but clean, with southern exposure and a bathtub that actually held hot water. My credit score was 742. I knew the exact number because I'd checked it the week before. Thinking about buying a condo. Inside the hospital, I was Rebecca Chun, RN, the nurse you wanted when everything went sideways. 8 years in the emergency department, 5 of them in trauma. The other nurses called me Steady Chun because my hands never shook, not even during the worst codes. I could get in 4 into anyone: dehydrated babies, elderly patients with tissue paper veins, addicts whose accessible vessels had long since collapsed. It was a point of pride. Identity. The July 4th massacre tested all of us. 14 gunshot wounds in 2 hours, gang violence that spilled over from a barbecue into a war. I ran 3 codes simultaneously, bouncing between beds like a ping pong ball, calling out medications, compressing chests, watching the monitors, and knowing exactly what each rhythm meant. We saved 11 of them. The local news called us heroes. Marina nominated me for an Excellence Award, but it was the quiet Thursday in September that broke something in me. Her name was Aisha. 7 years old, brought in unconscious, multiple trauma indicators. Her mother's boyfriend said she fell down the stairs. The bruises told a different story. Old ones yellowing under new purple ones, finger marks on her upper arms, the specific pattern of belt marks across her back. I'd seen enough to know that we worked on her for 3 hours. I held her hand while Dr. Hassan drilled an intraosseous line into her shin when we couldn't get for access. Her hand was so small, her nail polish chipped pink with little hearts. Some other nurse, some better nurse, would have been able to maintain professional distance. But when she died, when Dr. Hassan called time at 11:47 p.m., I felt something crack inside my chest. "You okay?" Marina asked, finding me in the supply closet 20 minutes later. "Fine," I said, and I thought I was. We'd lost patients before. We'd lose them again. That was emergency medicine, but I couldn't stop feeling Aisha's weight in my arms when I lifted her from the gurney to the CT table. 43 pounds. My nephew Brandon weighed more, and he was only 5. I went home that night and sat in my bathtub until the water turned cold, and I could still feel her hand in mine. The medication room at St. Mary's required a badge swipe and a code. Every withdrawal had to be logged, witnessed, accounted for. Controlled substances were kept in a locked cabinet within the locked room, everything tracked by computer. The fentanyl patches were in drawer 3, individually wrapped. Each one worth about $80 on the street, but priceless if you were in pain. Or if you needed to stop feeling. The first time was 3 days after Aisha died. I was working a double, 16 hours straight, and my back hurt from compressions on a 300-pound cardiac arrest. That's what I told myself. My back hurt. I needed relief. I signed out a patch for a patient who'd been discharged an hour earlier, the computer system lag working in my favor. Logged it as administered, had Jenny witness it while she was dealing with 2 other patients. Her signature quick and trusting. I in the bathroom. I pressed the patch against my ribs, under my bra line where no one would see. The medication absorbed through the skin slowly, designed to last 72 hours. Within an hour, I felt the warmth spreading through my chest. Not high, not impaired, just insulated. Like someone had wrapped me in cotton, muffling the sharp edges of the world. Aisha's weight lifted from my arms. The mother's screams faded from my memory. I finished my shift smoothly, efficiently, better than I had in days. "There's the Rebecca I know," Marina said when I gave report. I touched the patch through my scrubs, feeling its edges, this small square secret that made me functional again. I told myself it was temporary, just until I processed Aisha's death, just until I could sleep without seeing her nail polish. Just this once. 3 months later, I was wearing 3 patches at a time and buying pills from Derek, the security guard who knew exactly which nurses were struggling and how to profit from my by January, 9 months into my secret. I was a master of juggling lies. The rent was late because of a banking error. That's what I told my landlord when December's payment bounced. I'd fix it next week, I promised, knowing I'd already given Derek $1,200 for pills to supplement the patches I couldn't steal fast enough. He'd raised his prices after Christmas, said his supplier was nervous. We both knew he had me trapped. "Rebecca, can you cover Jennifer's shift tomorrow?" Marina asked during morning huddle. "Her kid's sick." "Of course," I said, mental math spinning. Another shift meant more access to the medication room, but also more hours where I had to appear normal while my skin crawled with need. 3 patches weren't holding me anymore. The tolerance had built so fast, my body demanding more just to feel baseline. My sister Jennifer, different Jennifer, my actual sister, called during my break. "Mom wants to know if you're coming to her birthday dinner. It's her 70th, Becca. You can't miss it." "When is it again?" I asked, though I knew. "February 15th. I'd already withdrawn the $800 from the birthday fund we'd been building together, told myself I'd replace it before anyone noticed. "Are you okay? You sound tired." "Just busy. You know how winters are here. Flu season. Brandon made you something in art class. He misses his Aunt Becky." The guilt twisted in my stomach, competing with the fentanyl for space. "Tell him I miss him too. I'll try to make dinner." Try. Everything was try now. Maybe we'll see. Nothing definite except the need. That shift, I made my first real medical error. Mr. Patterson, post-cardiac cath, needed his heparin drip adjusted. Simple calculation I'd done thousands of times. But my brain kept sliding off the numbers, like trying to hold water. I programmed the pump wrong, double the dose. Marina caught it during rounds. "That could have killed him," she said quietly. After we'd fixed it, after Mr. Patterson's blood was rechecked, and he was miraculously fine. "I know. I'm sorry. I haven't been sleeping well." She studied me, and for a moment I thought she could see through my scrubs to the patches underneath, the secret destroying me from inside. "Take better care of yourself, Rebecca. We need you healthy." "Healthy?" I almost laughed. The next morning, Mrs. Williams in bed 7 complained. "That nurse last night never gave me anything for pain," she told the day shift. I asked and asked, but she said the doctor hadn't ordered anything. Except he had. I'd signed out her morphine, documented administering it, pocketed it instead while she cried. For milligrams that I'd crushed and swallowed in the bathroom, desperate for anything to bridge the gap between patches. Marina pulled me aside. "Mrs. Williams says she didn't get her pain meds. She's confused. Elderly, probably some dementia." I gave them. The lie came so easily. Check the March. The medication administration record showed exactly what I needed it to show. My documentation was perfect. It always was. Marina nodded, but something in her eyes had changed. A distance that hadn't been there before. Jenny, my coworker Jenny, who'd been witnessing my waste without really watching, mentioned it at lunch. "They're doing inventory on the narcotics. Apparently there's a discrepancy." My sandwich turned to cardboard in my mouth. "Really?" "Yeah. Admin's freaking out. They might put in cameras." "Cameras?" My skin went cold, then hot. How long would it take them to review footage? How far back would they look? That night, I met Derek in the parking garage, handed him $1,400, my entire checking account, plus a payday loan I'd taken out online at 39% interest. "You're looking rough," he said, counting the bills. "Maybe you should slow down. Maybe you should mind your business." He shrugged, handed me a bottle. "Your funeral." I dry swallowed 3 pills before I even got to my car. By the time I got home, the edges were finally soft again. I sat on my couch, looking at the pile of unopened mail, bills, mostly, final notices in red envelopes, and thought about Aisha. Her mother had been arrested. The boyfriend was in custody. None of it would bring her back. None of it made those 43 pounds any lighter in my arms. My phone buzzed. Brandon, my nephew, had sent a video through Jennifer's phone. "Hi, Aunt Becky. Look what I made." He held up a painted coffee mug, wobbly hearts, and best AUNT, in crooked letters that I watched it 6 times. Crying, knowing I'd already stolen his college fund contribution, knowing I was becoming someone he wouldn't recognize. The patches under my scrubs felt like armor and accusation both. Tomorrow, I told myself. Tomorrow I'd stop, but I'd been saying that for months. And tomorrow kept turning into another desperate today. The morning they caught me, February 6th, started like any other lie. I badged in at 6:47 a.m. for the 7 o'clock shift, grabbed coffee from the break room, complained about the weather with the night nurses. Normal Rebecca things. Steady Chun reporting for duty. Marina intercepted me at the medication room. "Rebecca, can you come with me for a moment?" Her voice was careful, professional, the voice she used for family members about to receive bad news. Behind her stood HR Director Patricia Morse and Tom from security. Not Derek. Tom, the supervisor. The conference room had no windows. On the table, a manila folder thick with papers. Patricia opened it slowly, like she was defusing a bomb. "We need to discuss some discrepancies." The photos were grainy but clear enough. Me palming patches, tucking them into my waistband, my bra, my pockets. Dated across 3 weeks. They'd been building a case while I thought I was invisible. That's not. I started, but what could I say? My face was clear in every image. Marina wouldn't look at me. She stared at the wall behind my head, her hands folded so tight her knuckles went white. "We've documented 47 separate incidents," Patricia continued. "The street value exceeds $8,000. $8,000. I'd sold my car's equity, maxed 3 credit cards, stolen from my family, and it all equaled this number on their paper. We're terminating your employment effective immediately. Your nursing license will be reported to the state board. The police have been notified." Tom stood up. "I need to escort you to your locker." The walk through the ER felt like drowning in reverse. Everyone watching but pretending not to. Jenny's mouth open in shock. Dr. Hassan turning away. The janitor, Marcus, who'd always saved me the good parking spot, wouldn't meet my eyes. 20 minutes. That's what they gave me. 20 minutes to pack 8 years into a cardboard box. My stethoscope, the one Marina had given me when I passed my trauma certification. The coffee mug from Brandon. Phone charger. Granola bars. 3 pens. A photo of the ER staff at last year's Christmas party. All of us in ugly sweaters. Laughing. "I need my jacket," I told Tom. February cold waiting outside. "Make it quick." The jacket had 2 patches hidden in the inner pocket. My emergency stash. Tom didn't check. Why would he? I was already destroyed. They walked me out the employee entrance I'd used thousands of times. My badge wouldn't work anymore. Tom had to open it with his. The morning shift was still arriving. I saw their faces change as they recognized me. Saw them understand what the box meant that I in my car. I sat for an hour, engine off, watching people I knew walk into work. Finally, I called Jennifer. The phone rang 4 times. I hung up before voicemail. What would I say? How do you tell your sister you're exactly who you never wanted to be? Channel 7 ran the story 3 days later. Local nurse arrested for drug theft. They used my employee photo, the one where I'm smiling, professional, trustworthy. The reporter stood outside St. Mary's, explaining how I'd stolen medications meant for patients in pain. My landlord saw it. Jennifer saw it. Brandon's teacher saw it. "You need to be out by March 1st, my landlord said through my door. "I'm starting eviction proceedings." I sat on my floor, back against the wall, watching my face on the news again at noon. They'd added details. The $8,000. The 47 incidents. How long the investigation had taken. They interviewed a patient advocate about the importance of trusting medical professionals. Jennifer showed up that afternoon. Didn't knock, used her spare key. $800, Rebecca. You stole $800 from Mom's birthday fund. I couldn't look at her. I was going to replace it. With what? You don't even have a job. She threw the spare key on my coffee table. Brandon's asking why Aunt Becky is on TV. His teacher called me. Do you understand what you've done? I'm sick, Jen. It's addiction. I need help. You need to stay away from us. Her voice broke. I'm telling Brandon you died. It's kinder than the truth. She walked to the door, stopped. Get help or don't. But we're done. The silence after she left was complete. My phone rang constantly for 2 days. Reporters, mostly. Then it stopped ringing at all. The nursing board sent a certified letter. License suspended pending investigation. Court date in October. I needed a lawyer. The public defender's office said they'd assign someone eventually. My car was repossessed on a Tuesday. I watched from my apartment window as they loaded it onto the truck. The repo man looked bored. Just another day, another person who couldn't pay. I sold everything worth selling. Laptop to a pawn shop, 200. Jewelry I'd inherited from my grandmother, 180. The couch and TV to a guy from Craigslist, 300. All of it together wouldn't cover a month's rent. The sheriff posted the 24-hour notice on February 28th. Bright orange paper, impossible to miss. The neighbors stared when they walked past. I packed what I could carry. Changes of clothes, medications, antibiotics I'd hoarded, basic first aid supplies. My nursing license, useless but still mine. One photo, me at my pinning ceremony, my mother beside me, both of us crying with pride. The last night in my apartment, I sat in the empty living room and made a list of everyone I'd failed. It was longer than I expected. At 10 a.m. on March 1st, the sheriff arrived. "You need to leave now, ma'am." I picked up my backpack, walked out. The door I'd walked through thousands of times, and heard the lock change behind me. Homeless. The words sat in my mouth like a stone. I chose St. Mary's loading dock for my first night because I knew things about it nobody else did. The security rotation had gaps. 3 to 5 a.m. Nobody checked behind the old dumpsters where they stored broken gurneys. The cameras didn't reach that corner. I'd smoked back there during my first year, when I still smoked, when I still had normal vices. The moving blanket smelled like motor oil, but it was thick, warm enough if I wrapped it tight. The emergency entrance beeped all night. Ambulances arriving. Departures. The rhythm I knew by heart. I told myself it was just like being on call. Any minute, someone would need me. Nobody needed me. At 6:45 a.m., Marina's silver Honda pulled into Space 15. Same time, same spot, like the world hadn't shifted off its axis. I watched her check her phone, gather her coffee, walk in with purpose. She had 43 patients depending on her today. I had nothing but time. "You're new." The voice made me jump. A man stood near the dumpster, leaning on a crutch. His left leg was swollen, red streaks running up toward his knee. "I remember you," he said. "You put in my for last year. Took you one try when everyone else needed 3. Tommy. Frequent flyer, diabetes, non-compliant with treatment." "That's infected," I said, looking at his leg. "No kidding. Can't get into the clinic for another week." A week would be too late. The red streaks meant the infection was spreading. Blood poisoning. He needed antibiotics immediately, probably 4, possibly surgical debridement. "You need to go to the ER." He laughed. "With what insurance? They'll stabilize and treat me." "Been there, done that." He looked at me closer. "You're the nurse from the news." My face burned. "Yeah, thought so. I'm Tommy. That's Sharon." He pointed to a woman pushing a shopping cart full of stuffed animals. "She's harmless. Calls everyone angels or demons, depending on the day." "Fallen angel," Sharon called out, waving at me. "The fallen angel is here." Great. Even the mentally ill recognized my shame. "And that's Marcus." An older black man emerged from behind a utility shed. "He's been out here 8 years. Knows all the spots." Marcus studied me. "You're the one who got caught stealing drugs." "Fentanyl," I said. "No point lying." He walked closer. "You still using?" "No. Can't afford it." The truth. I'd been involuntarily clean for 5 days, my skin crawling, everything too sharp without the patches. "Good. Stay that way. This life's hard enough without that poison." He looked at my corner. "That spot's no good. They'll roust you by midnight. Come on." He led me to a better location, an alcove by the old loading dock, protected on 3 sides, invisible from the main path. Security avoids this spot. Reminds them of the nurse who died here. "Who? Before your time." "Suicide. Years ago." He shrugged. "People are superstitious." A dead nurse's corner. Perfect. Marcus taught me the rules over the next few hours. Breakfast at St. Paul's Methodist, no sermon required. Lunch at Salvation Army, but get there early. The library had computers, 2-hour limit unless you knew which librarian to sweet talk. The YMCA would let you shower if you found the right guest pass. "Where do you sleep when it's really cold?" I asked. "Emergency shelters when they open. Otherwise, you adapt or you die." Tommy's leg was getting worse. I could see it from across our makeshift camp. By tomorrow, he'd be septic, but tomorrow wasn't my problem anymore. Nothing was my problem except surviving the next hour, then the next. 6 weeks into homelessness, I had a routine that would have horrified the old Rebecca. Wake at 5:30 to avoid security. Pack my corner, sleeping bag in a trash bag, hidden behind a dumpster. Walk to McDonald's, use the bathroom, buy coffee with the change I'd found. Library opened at 10. I learned to stretch my 2 computer hours, switching terminals when librarians changed shifts. 43 job applications sent. 0 responses. Every application ended the same way. Background check consent. They'd Google me, find the news stories, move on. Even McDonald's wouldn't call back. The welfare office was worse than the streets. 6-hour waits for 5-minute conversations. You don't qualify for emergency assistance yet, the caseworker said, not looking up from her screen. No dependent children, no documented disability. I'm homeless. So are 3,000 other people in this city. Next, Salvation Army lunch was the highlight. Mystery meat, but hot, filling the space where fentanyl used to live. The withdrawal had mostly passed, just phantom aches where the patches used to be. I'd lost 25 pounds. My clothes hung loose, held up with a belt I'd found. The mirror in the Y bathroom showed someone I didn't recognize, hollow cheeks, dull eyes, hair that hadn't been properly cut in months, but I still knew things. Watching the ambulances arrive, I could predict the diagnoses. Respiratory distress, the way they bagged them. Cardiac event, the CPR rhythm. Overdose, the specific urgency that wasn't quite panic. You always watching that hospital, Sharon said, her cart of animals parked next to me. Like you're waiting for something. I used to work there. We all used to be something. She arranged her stuffed bears carefully. I was a teacher. 3rd grade. 22 years. I wanted to ask what happened, but out here, you didn't. Everyone had a story. Most didn't want to tell it. Tommy hadn't been back for 3 days. The red streaks had reached his thigh last time I saw him. Marcus said the ambulance took him Sunday night. He'll be back or he won't, Marcus said. That's how it goes. My phone, prepaid. Now, $10 for minutes I rationed, buzzed with an email. Court summons forwarded from Jennifer's address. October 15th, 9 a.m. Criminal possession of controlled substances, prescription fraud, theft over $5,000. The public defender's office was downtown, between the shelter and the library. I waited 4 hours to meet my lawyer. David Chun, no relation, looked younger than me, overwhelmed, coffee-stained tie. Plead guilty. You'll get 18 months, probably serve 6. Fight it. You're looking at 3 to 5. What about drug court? Treatment programs. He shuffled papers. Your theft amount is too high. You were in a position of trust. The hospital wants maximum penalties. He looked up. You should take the deal. 18 months. In October, I'd have been homeless 8 months. Jail might be better. 3 meals, a bed, medical care. I'll think about it. Walking back to the hospital, I passed the employee parking. Second shift arriving. Saw Jenny, the one who'd witnessed my fake waste signatures. She saw me, quickly looked away, walked faster. I understood. I was the cautionary tale now, the reminder that any of them could fall. That night, I found a fentanyl patch on the ground near the ambulance bay. Someone must have dropped it, though that seemed impossible with the strict protocols that I held it up to the security light. 50 micrograms per hour. Enough to stop the aching, the memories, the weight of failure. I stood there for an hour, the patch warming in my palm. Then I threw it in the sharps container by the employee entrance. First time I'd used one for its intended purpose in over a year. My first arrest came in April, during a late storm that drove everyone indoors. The 24-hour laundromat on Riverside was warm, bright, normal-looking people doing normal things. I dozed in the corner chair, my bag as a pillow, pretending to wait for a load that didn't exist. Ma'am, you need to leave. The cop was young, nervous. The owner stood behind him, arms crossed. I'm doing laundry. No, you're not. Let's go. The handcuffs were cold. People stared as he walked me out. The homeless woman caught trying to be human. At booking, they took my fingerprints, photo, the possessions that fit in a manila envelope. One photo, $12, a dead phone. Orange jumpsuit, like on TV, except it smelled like industrial bleach and other people's fear. My cellmate was Diane, 60-something, gray hair in a neat bun despite everything. You're the nurse, she said. Saw you on the news. Yeah, I killed my husband 20 years ago. She said it like mentioning the weather. He beat me for 15 years. One night, I beat back. With a hammer. She had commissary money, bought me instant coffee. Real kindness in a place designed to eliminate it. Nurses who steal drugs, Diane explained. They have it rough in here. Other inmates figure you let people suffer. My advice: keep your head down. Don't mention what you did. 3 days, 72-hour hold for trespassing. They released me at 2 a.m. with a court date I'd probably miss. My sleeping spot was taken. My hidden bag, gone. The photo from my pinning ceremony, the only proof I'd been someone else, disappeared. Tommy was back, minus his left leg below the knee. Amputation, he said, like I couldn't see. Sepsis. Almost died. The prosthetic was cheap, ill-fitting. He showed me the stump, still healing wrong. You knew, didn't you? You could see how bad it was. Yes. Why didn't you say something? I did. You said you couldn't afford the ER. But you knew. You could have. He stopped. What could I have done? Stolen antibiotics? Performed street surgery? We shared a bottle of vodka Marcus had found. $5 rot gut that burned away the sharp edges. I was terrified, Tommy admitted. When they said amputation, I wanted to die. Still do sometimes. Don't, I said, though I understood. It gets easier. Does it? I thought about the fentanyl patch I'd thrown away. The daily choice to stay clean when using would be so much simpler. I don't know. Maybe not easier. Just different. Sharon pushed her cart over, arranged 3 stuffed bears around Tommy's stump. For protection, she said seriously. The bears know about loss. Tommy laughed, then cried, then laughed again. We sat there, the 4 of us, damaged people in the shadow of the hospital that had saved and failed us in equal measure. You ever think about using again? Tommy asked, every minute of every day. Sometimes. What stops you? I thought about it. Not hope. Not some grand purpose. Just Marcus's disappointed face, Sharon's weird faith in her bears, Tommy needing someone who understood why his phantom leg still hurt. I don't know. Tomorrow, maybe nothing will. But tomorrow I'd wake up clean again. Another small victory in a war I was mostly losing. The security guard walked past. Not Derek, the nervous new one. He saw us, kept walking. We weren't worth the paperwork. At least we're invisible, Marcus said. Visible people have responsibilities. I looked at the lit windows of the ER, wondered what emergencies were unfolding, what medications were being pushed, what lives were being saved by people who still had licenses. Yeah, I said. Lucky us. October arrived with my court date and the kind of cold that made bones ache. I'd been homeless 7 months. The public defender, David Chun, met me for 12 minutes in the hallway before my hearing. Plead guilty, take the deal. 18 months. You'll serve maybe 6 with good behavior. His tie was different, but equally coffee-stained. He kept checking his phone while talking. What about treatment programs? Your theft amount disqualifies you. The hospital wants restitution, $5,000. I don't have $5. Then you'll have a judgment against you forever. Look, this is the best deal you'll get. The courtroom smelled like wood polish and disappointment. I stood when told, spoke when asked, became a case number in a system that processed people like me every 10 minutes. Guilty, Your Honor. 18 months, 11 suspended. $5,000 restitution to St. Mary's. Time served counted, 3 days. My nursing license, already suspended, would be permanently revoked. Outside the courthouse, Jennifer waited. She looked older, tired. Brandon had grown 3 inches in the photos on her phone she didn't show me. I told him you died. She handed me $200. It's easier than explaining what you became. Jen, don't. Just don't. Get help or don't. But we're done. She walked to her car, a new one, I noticed. Life had moved on without me. As she drove away, I saw Brandon's backpack in the back seat. Dinosaurs on it. He'd loved dinosaurs at 5. The money could buy a motel room for 3 nights or food for 3 weeks. I chose food. That night, I sat in McDonald's with a $1 menu coffee and wrote on napkins. Things I wanted to remember. The way Frost looked on medical waste bags. Tommy's laugh when Sharon surrounded his stump with bears. The specific blue of trauma gowns at 3 a.m. Marina's sandwich appearing when I needed it most. You writing a book? The voice belonged to a man in scrubs. Respiratory therapist, by the badge. Young, maybe 25. Just notes. You're the nurse. Rebecca Chun. My face burned. Not anymore. I'm James. I started at St. Mary's last month. He sat down uninvited. Marina talks about you. I doubt that. She does. Says you were the best trauma nurse she ever had. He paused. Before. Everything was before and after now. Why are you talking to me? Because I'm in recovery. 2 years clean. Opioids after a car accident. He pulled out his NA chip, worn smooth. I know what it's like. I'm not. I don't go to meetings. Maybe you should. He wrote an address on my napkin. St. Paul's Methodist, Thursdays, 7 p.m. They don't judge. Half of them are medical professionals. After he left, I looked at the address for an hour. Meetings meant admitting things. Meant hope, which was dangerous when you had nothing. But Thursday, I went. The basement of St. Paul's smelled like coffee and industrial carpet. Circle of chairs, faces that looked like mine. Tired, wary, holding on. I'm Rebecca, I said when it was my turn. I'm an addict. The words tasted like truth, bitter and necessary. Gerald, the group leader, had 12 years clean. Former pharmacist. The knowledge is the worst part, he said after I shared. Knowing exactly what would fix you, having the skills to get it. He was right. I could name every medication that would stop the crawling under my skin, knew their dosages, interactions, side effects. My hands still moved through the motions of drawing up syringes in my sleep. But knowledge can be repurposed, Gerald continued. You know what helps. You also know what hurts. After the meeting, he pulled me aside. You need work. No one will hire me. I know someone. Restaurant, cash under the table. It's not medicine, but it's honest. Dishwasher at Rosario's kitchen. $8 an hour, no questions asked. Tommy died in November, the week before Thanksgiving. Not from infection or diabetes or any of the medical disasters I'd watched approaching. He got drunk, fell off the loading dock, hit his head on the concrete. Internal bleeding they might have caught if he'd been someone else, somewhere else. Marcus found him at dawn, already cold. Should have been me, Marcus said, which we all thought sometimes. Why him, why not us? No logic to who survived out here that we held a memorial in our corner. Sharon arranged all her bears in a circle, placed Tommy's prosthetic in the center like some weird altar. He was scared of the dark, she said. Even before the leg. Told me once. I hadn't known that. 7 months of sleeping 20 feet apart, and I didn't know he was afraid of the dark. Derek walked past during our makeshift service. The security guard who'd sold me pills, who'd taken my rent money, who'd fed my addiction when he knew I was drowning, that he looked at me, through me, kept walking. That's the one, Marcus said quietly. The dealer. How did you? I see everything. Been watching him for years. He gets nurses hooked, then bleeds them dry. Marcus spat. You weren't the first. The anger hit sudden and useless. Derek had provided the drugs, but I'd been the one to take them. My hands had stolen from patients. My signature on the falsified documents. Let it go, Marcus advised. Anger's just another addiction. He was right. But I watched Derek's retreating back and imagined violence I'd never commit. That night, I dreamed about Tommy. He had both legs, was dancing badly to music only he could hear. Aisha was there too, nail polish perfect, laughing at his moves. All my ghosts, whole again. I woke to snow, the first real accumulation. My corner had a leak I hadn't noticed before. Water dripped steadily onto my sleeping bag, soaking through at Rosario's. I washed dishes for 10 hours. My hands, which once started IVs and pushed life-saving medications, now scraped food into trash, sprayed industrial soap, stacked plates. The steam made my fingers prune, loosened the joints until they ached. You're good at this, Miguel the cook said. Reliable. Reliable. I'd been called that before. In another life, he had a daughter, Sophia, studying for her EMT certification. Mentioned it casually, but I heard the question underneath. I could help her study. I offered. I still remember the protocols. You were a nurse, right? Before. Everyone knew. Small kitchen, big gossip. Yeah, before. Sophia came by that Saturday with textbooks I recognized, pages I'd memorized a decade ago. We sat in the closed restaurant, and I taught her about blood pressure, shock symptoms, triage protocols. Why did you stop being a nurse? She asked. I made mistakes. What kind? The kind you can't take back. She was smart, caught on quick. When she practiced taking my blood pressure, her hands were steady. Like mine used to be. You're good at teaching, she said. I had good teachers. Marina had trained me, spent extra hours making sure I understood not just the what but the why. I'd failed her in every possible way. Miguel paid me extra for tutoring, off the books. $40 that meant 2 nights in a motel, a chance to shower properly, sleep horizontal. I in the motel room. I found a fentanyl patch stuck to the back of the nightstand. Some previous occupant's loss. I held it up to the light, read the dosage, felt my body remember what it was like to not hurt. I flushed it down the toilet. Progress. December brought the kind of cold that killed people like us. The city opened emergency shelters when temperatures dropped below 20, but you had to get there early, and they kicked you out at dawn regardless of the weather. I'd been working at Rosario's for 6 weeks, my hands permanently wrinkled from dish soap, my back aching from hunching over industrial sinks. Miguel trusted me to open alone now, arriving at 5 a.m. to prep vegetables and start the coffee that would sustain the breakfast rush. The morning I found Sharon. She was sitting against the dumpster with her bears arranged in a perfect circle around her. She'd been dead for hours, froze to death clutching a stuffed elephant. Peaceful, Marcus said, though we both knew better. Hypothermia wasn't peaceful. It was your body shutting down room by room while your brain told you everything was fine. The paramedics who came knew me from before. Jake and Patricia, the Tuesday day shift. They'd brought me patients for 8 years, trusted me with their sickest calls. Rebecca? Jake's voice was careful, professional. You found her. Around 4 this morning. Patricia documented while Jake examined Sharon's body. Same protocols I'd watched hundreds of times, except now I was the witness, not the professional. You okay? Patricia asked as they loaded Sharon onto the gurney. Such a simple question with no simple answer. Was I okay? I was alive, sober, employed. Also homeless, heartbroken, surrounded by death I couldn't prevent despite everything I knew. Yeah, I'm okay. At the memorial service, another circle of bears. Another empty spot in our corner. Marcus announced he was going south for the winter. Florida. Got a cousin says there's work picking oranges. What about here? Here's dying one by one. Tommy, Sharon. Soon it'll be me or you. He looked at the hospital windows. This place is cursed for people like us. I understood. The hospital drew us like moths to flame. Familiar, warm, ultimately destructive. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. That night, alone in the corner that had housed 4 of us just months ago, I made a decision that scared me more than any needle or patch ever had, that I was going to try to live instead of just survive. New Year's Eve. I worked a double shift at Rosario's. The restaurant was busy with people celebrating, ordering champagne and desserts, laughing too loudly. I watched through the kitchen window as couples kissed at midnight, marking the transition from one year to the next at 12:01 a.m. I was 34 years old, 11 months sober, and completely alone. Miguel found me crying into a sink of dirty glasses. What's wrong, Mija? Just tired. He handed me a beer from the walk-in cooler. For the new year. I held it, feeling the cold weight. It wasn't fentanyl, wasn't even the same addiction, but I knew how this story could go. 1 beer becomes 3 becomes whatever Derek was selling behind the hospital. I can't. Recovery? Yeah. Miguel took the beer back without judgment. My brother too. Cocaine. 7 years clean. He paused. You know what he told me? Recovery isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the drugs. Who was I before? 8 years ago, I was Rebecca Chun, trauma nurse, someone who saved lives. But going back further, who was the girl who decided to become a nurse? What had she wanted? The next morning, I walked to the public library with a specific purpose. Used my 2 hours of computer time to research something I'd been thinking about for weeks: nursing license restoration in Pennsylvania. The process was brutal. Petition the board, demonstrate rehabilitation, complete continuing education, supervised practice period. Most applications were denied, but some weren't. The application fee was $300 I didn't have. The legal costs would be thousands more. The psychological evaluation required. The character references from people who probably wouldn't take my calls. I printed the forms anyway. Sophia passed her EMT certification in January. Miguel threw a party at the restaurant after closing, invited the whole kitchen staff and their families. I watched her receive congratulations, saw her parents' pride, remembered my own pinning ceremony. You helped make this happen, Miguel told me. You're a good teacher. Teaching. I hadn't considered that. Maybe I couldn't be a nurse again, but I could teach others to be nurses, or EMTs, or just help people understand their medications, their conditions. Walking home, to my corner, to the loading dock that had become familiar as any apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in over a year: purpose, February marked 1 year since I'd lost my apartment. The anniversary passed without fanfare. Just another cold night behind the hospital, another shift at Rosario's, another day of being invisible to the world I used to belong to. But something had changed. I'd been saving money, $10 here, 20 there, hiding it in a plastic bag taped inside the dumpster. $247 toward the nursing board application fee. Derek still worked security, still dealt pills to desperate medical professionals. I'd watched him operate for months, learning his patterns, his customers, his weaknesses. The knowledge sat in my chest like a weapon I wasn't sure how to use. The opportunity came during a February storm that knocked out half the city's power. St. Mary's was running on generators. Emergency protocols in effect. Derek was working overtime, alone on the night shift that I found him in the parking garage at 3 a.m., counting money behind a concrete pillar. "Rebecca." He wasn't surprised to see me. "You look terrible. You look prosperous." He laughed, pocketing the bills. "Supply and demand. Your people never stop needing what I've got." My people. Nurses, doctors, techs, professionals who'd taken oaths to do no harm, destroyed by the very substances meant to heal. "How many?" I asked. "How many what? How many nurses have you gotten hooked? How many lives have you destroyed?" Derek shrugged. "Not my problem what people do with their purchases. I'm just a businessman." "Jenny Martinez, from ICU. She's buying from you now." His silence confirmed it. Jenny, who'd witnessed my fake waste signatures, who'd trusted me completely. Now she was walking the same path I'd stumbled down. "Stay away from her." "Or what? You'll call security?" Derek smiled. "Oh wait, I am security." The violence rose in me like a fever. This man had profited from my addiction, fed it while I destroyed myself. But violence would make me like him, someone who solved problems by destroying others. Instead, I walked away, but I took his license plate number, his shift schedule, everything I'd need to destroy him the right way at Rosario's the next morning. I asked Miguel about his brother, the one in recovery. Does he ever want revenge on his dealers? Every day for the first 2 years. Then he realized something. Revenge is just another drug. Feels good temporarily, leaves you empty after. So what did he do? Got clean, stayed clean, helped other people get clean. Best revenge is living well. Miguel was right, but living well required more than surviving. It required becoming someone worth being again. The letter arrived at the restaurant in March. Miguel had agreed to let me use Rosario's as my mailing address. Official letterhead, familiar logo. St. Mary's Hospital seeks qualified individuals for environmental services positions. Competitive wages, benefits, opportunity for advancement. A job posting. Janitor at the hospital where I'd been a nurse, where I'd stolen drugs, where I'd been walked out in disgrace that I read it 3 times before the irony stopped being bitter and started being funny. Then I filled out the application. The interview was scheduled for a Thursday. I borrowed clothes from the church donation box, dress pants that were too big, a blouse with someone else's perfume still clinging to the fabric. Used the YMCA guest pass to shower, combed my hair until it looked professional. The hiring manager, Carol Winters, was someone I'd never met. She reviewed my application with the same expression she'd use for any other desperate person seeking minimum wage work. Says here you have a gap in employment. 2 years. I had some personal issues. I'm stable now. Any medical experience? The question hung in the air. I could lie, claim ignorance, try to hide who I'd been. But lies had gotten me here in the first place. I was a nurse. Here. Before. Her expression shifted. "Rebecca Chun. I remember the case. I'm not that person anymore. But you're still a person who stole from patients." "Yes, I am. I'm also a person who's been clean for 15 months, who works 60 hours a week washing dishes, who knows this hospital better than anyone." I met her eyes. "I need this job. You need someone who won't steal because I've already lost everything I could lose." She studied me for a long time. Night shift. Environmental services. 7 to 7. Probationary period is 6 months. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You'll be cleaning the same floors you used to walk as a nurse. Same trauma bays, same medication room. Can you handle that?" Could I handle mopping floors where I used to save lives? Emptying trash cans in rooms where I used to be respected? I can handle it. The uniform was green scrubs instead of blue. My name tag read Environmental Services instead of RN. But But walking through St. Mary's employee entrance felt like coming home to a house where you no longer live. My first night. I cleaned the trauma bay where I'd worked on Aisha, where everything had started to crack. The mop felt strange in hands that had once pushed medications, started IVs, performed CPR, but honest work had its own rhythm, its own dignity. Dr. Hassan was working trauma the night I cleaned his station. He looked up from charting, did a double take, then looked away quickly. The same reaction I'd gotten from everyone who recognized me. Embarrassment mixed with something that might have been pity. 3 hours into my shift, he found me in the supply closet where I was restocking paper towels. Rebecca, Dr. Hassan, how are you? Such a simple question from someone who'd seen me at my best and knew about my worst. We'd worked codes together, celebrated saves, mourned losses. I'm okay. Clean. Working. Good. That's good. He paused. You were the best trauma nurse I ever worked with. Before. Yes. Before. He handed me his empty coffee cup, not because he was dismissive, but because he didn't know what else to do. The new nurses, they're competent, but they don't have your instincts. After he left, I sat in the supply closet for 10 minutes, crying into industrial paper towels. Not from sadness, from something more complicated. Grief for who I'd been mixed with gratitude for who I was becoming. The night shift nurses barely noticed me. To them, I was just another member of the environmental staff, invisible unless something needed cleaning. But I noticed them, watched their hands shake during difficult procedures, saw who was getting too close to the medication room, recognized the signs of someone beginning to crack. Jenny Martinez was one of them. The nurse who'd witnessed my fake waste signatures, who Derek was now supplying. She'd lost weight, developed the telltale signs, hypervigilance followed by periods of exhaustion, taking bathroom breaks that lasted too long that I wanted to warn her, to somehow save her from the path I'd walked. But what could I say? I was the cautionary tale, the reason for increased security cameras and stricter medication protocols. Instead, I did what I could. Left encouraging notes where she'd find them. You're doing great. Tough shift, but you handled it. Small kindnesses from an anonymous source. One night, I found her crying in the same supply closet where Dr. Hassan had found me. Bad case? I asked, emptying the trash. She looked up, recognized me, stiffened. Just tired. I know that tired. I paused in my cleaning. The kind where nothing helps except the one thing that helps too much. She was quiet for a long time. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. I finished emptying the trash, started to leave. There are meetings. Thursday nights at St. Paul's. People who understand. I'm not. I don't have a problem. Neither did I. Until I did. Spring came early that year. Snowbanks melting into gray slush that ran through the loading dock and rivers. I'd been working at St. Mary's for 6 weeks, saving every penny toward an apartment deposit. $412 hidden in a new spot, sealed in plastic, buried under the dumpster. The night Jenny Martinez overdosed, I was cleaning Trauma Bay 2 when the code blue alarm sounded. Staff bathroom, 2nd floor. I knew the location, private, rarely checked. Perfect for someone who needed privacy for all the wrong reasons. I watched them while her passed, unconscious, blue-lipped. The specific stillness that meant respiratory depression. Dr. Hassan running alongside the gurney, calling out orders I knew by heart. 2 milligrams Narcan, bag mask ventilation, get me a blood gas that she'd survive. I could tell from the rhythm of the resuscitation, the controlled urgency that meant critical but salvageable. But her career was over. Her life, as she knew it, finished. During my break, I sat in the parking garage where Derek conducted his business. Waited until he appeared, counting money as always. Heard about your ICU nurse, I said, stepping out of the shadows. Derek pocketed the bills casually. Occupational hazard. Comes with the territory. She has 2 kids. So did you, I heard. Nephew or something. The rage was clean, pure, unlike anything I'd felt in recovery. This man had destroyed Jenny's life the same way he'd helped destroy mine. Fed addiction like gasoline on fire, profited from desperation. I know what you are, I said. Yeah? What's that? A predator. You find people who are hurting and you make it worse. Derek laughed. I provide a service. Supply and demand, market economics. No different than any other business. Those are people, not customers. Your choice what to do with the merchandise. I never forced anyone. He was right, technically. I'd chosen to steal the first patch, chosen to lie about waste, chosen to destroy my life one decision at a time. But he'd made it easy, profitable, available. Stay away from the nurses. Or what? I didn't answer, just walked away. But I'd made a decision that scared me more than confronting Derek had that I was going to do something about him. Not violence, not revenge. Something that required me to step back into the light, to become visible again. The next morning, I called the DEA tip line. Anonymous report about a security guard selling prescription drugs to hospital staff. License plate number, shift schedule, description of his operation. Everything I'd observed over months of watching. Then I called the nursing board investigator who'd handled my case. This is Rebecca Chun. I have information about drug diversion at St. Mary's Hospital. The DEA moved faster than I expected. Within a week, Derek was arrested during a controlled buy operation. The local news covered it briefly. Hospital security guard charged in drug ring. But they missed the bigger story that Derek's arrest led to a broader investigation. Financial records, phone logs, purchase patterns. The web of addiction he'd helped weave through St. Mary's was larger than I'd imagined. 12 healthcare workers over 3 years, thousands of pills diverted, careers destroyed that I wasn't called to testify. My credibility was too compromised, but my tip had started the investigation. Small redemption for someone who'd contributed to the problem. Jenny Martinez entered treatment at a facility in Delaware. 30 days inpatient, followed by intensive outpatient therapy. Her kids stayed with their grandmother. She lost her nursing license, but kept her life. The night before she left, she found me in the supply closet where we'd first talked about meetings. "The notes," she said. "That was you." "I don't know what you mean." "The encouraging notes. You were trying to help." She paused. "Why?" "Because someone should have tried to help me." She cried then, the kind of crying that comes from finally admitting you're drowning. I wanted to hug her, to tell her it would be okay, but I was still just the janitor to most people. Instead, I handed her paper towels and let her grieve. "The meetings you mentioned," she said finally. "Do they work?" "They work if you work them, but they're just meetings. The real work happens everywhere else." Could you tell them about me?" "At the meeting?" "Tell them what?" "That I'm trying. That someone else is trying to get clean." Gerald, our meeting leader, cried when I shared Jenny's story. We were used to death and relapse, but recovery, actual recovery, still felt miraculous. "You saved her life," he said after the meeting. "She saved her own life." I just pointed toward the door. But walking home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Aisha died in my arms. The weight of responsibility, yes, but also the possibility that my failures could somehow become useful. That my wreckage could become a foundation for something better. At Rosario's the next morning, Miguel handed me an envelope with my pay and something extra. "Performance bonus," he explained. "You've been here 8 months, never missed a shift, trained 3 new dishwashers." He paused. "Sophia got accepted to nursing school. Says you helped her understand what it means to care for people." Inside the envelope was $600. Combined with my savings, enough for an apartment deposit, first month's rent, a chance to sleep indoors for the first time in over a year, but I wasn't ready yet. Had more work to do, more amends to make. The apartment was a studio above a laundromat on Riverside Street, 6 blocks from the hospital. 400 square feet, 1 window, a bathtub the size of a coffin. The landlord, Mrs. Chun, no relation, was skeptical until I showed her my pay stubs from both jobs and 6 months of savings. No parties, no drugs, rent due on the 1st. "Yes, ma'am." The key felt heavier than it should have, weighted with possibility and terror. I'd been homeless for 14 months. Sleeping indoors required adjustments I hadn't anticipated. The silence was too quiet, the walls too close. The bed too soft after months on concrete. I kept my sleeping bag on the floor for the first week. Moving in required almost nothing. 1 change of clothes, basic toiletries, the photo from my nursing school graduation that I'd somehow kept through everything. I hung it on the bathroom mirror. A reminder of who I'd been and who I might become again. The nursing license restoration application sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I found the courage to complete it. 15 pages of questions about my addiction, my treatment, my current stability. Character references, I listed Gerald from NA, Miguel from the restaurant. Even Dr. Hassan after working up the courage to ask him. The $300 filing fee represented 2 weeks of groceries, but I sent it anyway. The psychological evaluation would cost 800 more. Legal fees for the hearing could reach 5,000, but I had time. The application process took minimum 2 years, maximum forever at St. Mary's. I'd been promoted to senior environmental technician. Day shift, better pay, supervision of the night cleaning crew. Not nursing, but healthcare. Close enough to medicine to remember why I'd loved it. The new trauma nurses were competent but inexperienced. I watched them struggle with procedures I could perform in my sleep, wanted to step in, to teach, to help. Instead, I cleaned around them, invisible and useful. One afternoon, while restocking supplies in Trauma Bay 1, I overheard a conversation that stopped me cold. The Chun case changed everything, one of the residents was saying. Before her, we were lax about medication security. Now we have cameras, double signatures, random audits. What happened to her? The other asked. Heard she died homeless. Overdose, probably. They were talking about me in past tense, as if I'd already become a cautionary tale that had reached its logical conclusion. The irony was almost funny. I was standing 3 feet away, very much alive, more sober than I'd been in years. But their assumption made sense. Most people like me didn't survive. Most addicted healthcare workers died homeless, used up their medical knowledge, lost everything that made them human. I finished restocking and walked to the employee break room, where my photo still hung on the in memoriam wall. Rebecca Chun, RN, 2010 to 2017. Dedicated trauma nurse. They'd memorialized me before I was dead, marked my professional death the day I was arrested. Looking at my smiling face, I felt neither anger nor sadness, just curious detachment. That person in the photo, she really was gone. What remained was something different. Not better or worse, just other. Walking home that evening, I passed the loading dock where I'd spent 14 months. Someone new had claimed my corner, a young man with the hollow-eyed look of fresh addiction. Probably medical, by the way he held himself. Maybe pharmacy, maybe nursing. I wanted to stop, to warn him about Derek's replacement, to tell him about meetings and hope and the possibility of climbing back up from the bottom. Instead, I kept walking. He'd find his own way out, or he wouldn't. That was the mathematics of addiction. Some live, some die. Most of us muddle through somewhere between the two. At home, I made dinner on my hot plate and read nursing journals I'd started buying again. The science had advanced since my suspension, new protocols, better medications. If I ever got my license back, I'd have years of catching up to do. If, for now, it was enough to have a door that locked, a bed that was mine, and the strange luxury of choosing what came next. Tomorrow, I'd continue becoming whoever I was meant to be after falling as far as anyone could fall. The future, for the first time in years, felt possible.